The Galactic Council had ruled for 3 millennia. Across 17 sectors, 43 species bent their backs, lowered their heads, and submitted to the iron will of the hegemony. The ritual was sacred, absolute, and had never been broken. Until Marcus Chen stepped into the crystalline chamber of judgment. Admiral Vorthak, his 6 arms spread in ceremonial dominance, watched the human approach with predatory satisfaction. The species was new to their empire. Their little blue world had fallen just months ago after a laughably brief resistance. Now came the moment every conquered race experienced. The submission ritual, where their representative would kneel before the council and formally surrender their people's autonomy forever. Human designate Marcus Chen. Vorthak's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic enhancers, reaching every corner where representatives of subjugated species watched from their assigned positions. You stand before the eternal majesty of the Galactic Council, as is tradition, as is law, as is inevitable. You will kneel. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, a lone figure in simple gray clothing amid the towering alien architecture. The golden floors reflected the light of 1,000 bioluminescent panels, creating an atmosphere designed to make any being feel small and insignificant. The council members, each representing a different conquered species, loomed above him from their elevated platforms, their forms alien, but their postures uniformly submissive. The human looked up at Vorthak with steady brown eyes and spoke. A single word. No. The silence that followed was deafening. In 3,000 years, no being had ever refused the ritual. The very concept was incomprehensible. Species knelt because the alternative was extinction, not just death, but complete erasure from galactic memory. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Perhaps the translation matrix malfunctioned. Human, you are commanded to kneel before your superiors and accept your species' place in the natural order. Marcus tilted his head slightly as if considering the words. I understood you perfectly, and my answer remains no. The Admiral's 6 arms tensed. Around the chamber, other council members shifted nervously. This had never happened before. There were no protocols for defiance at this stage, only the ritual, followed by integration into the Empire's vast bureaucratic machine. Human. Vorthak's voice dropped to a threatening whisper that somehow filled the enormous space. You do not seem to comprehend the gravity of your situation. Your planet burns. Your cities lie in ruins. Your military is scattered. You have no fleet, no allies, no hope of rescue. You are one being standing against the might of 3,000 years of galactic dominion. Kneel, and your people will be allowed to serve. Refuse, and they will be exterminated. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze sweeping across the chamber, taking in the faces of beings who had surrendered their freedom for survival. When he spoke again, his voice carried easily through the vast space without technological enhancement. 3,000 years ago, my people were beating each other with sticks and dying from infected cuts. 100 years ago, we were still bound to a single planet, convinced we were alone in the universe. 50 years ago, we took our first steps toward the stars. He paused, letting his words sink in. You want to know what we learned in that time? We learned that the universe is vast and full of wonders. We learned that intelligence takes countless forms. And we learned that freedom isn't something you're given, it's something you take. Vorthak's voice rose to a roar. Your philosophy means nothing before superior firepower. You are beaten. Are we? Marcus's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. You destroyed our fleets, yes. You occupied our world, true. But you made one critical error in your calculations. The Admiral leaned forward, his predatory confidence beginning to waver. What error? You assumed that breaking our military was the same as breaking our spirit. Marcus reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device. So simple it had. Passed through every security scanner as harmless debris. You see, we humans have this peculiar habit. When someone tells us we can't do something, we become absolutely obsessed with proving them wrong. He pressed a button on the device. Nothing happened. No explosion, no energy discharge, no dramatic display of force, just a tiny blinking light. Vorthak's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. What is this supposed to be, human? Some primitive weapon? A desperate final gesture? A signal, Marcus replied calmly. You see, while you were busy demolishing our obvious infrastructure, you overlooked our less obvious capabilities. Humans have this talent for building things in places you'd never think to look. Underground, underwater, in the empty spaces between stars. The first explosion lit up the chamber's windows. A distant flash that could have been a star going, nova. Then another. Then dozens more, spreading across the night sky in a cascade of light. Vorthak rushed to the observation deck, his subordinates scrambling behind him. Through the crystalline walls, they watched in growing horror as their mighty fleet, the very symbol of their invincible empire, erupted into flowers of fire and metal. How? The word came out as a strangled whisper. Marcus joined him at the window, his expression unchanged. We had a saying back on Earth. If you want to know a man's true character, give him power over someone who can't fight back. Well, Admiral, we've seen your character, and we've decided we don't much care for it. The lights in the chamber began to flicker as explosions continued to bloom across the fleet. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the station. But this is impossible, Vorthak breathed. Your world is occupied. Your people are under guard. Some of them, Marcus agreed. But humans spread out, Admiral. We hide, we plan, we wait, and we never ever forget that freedom is worth dying for. His voice hardened. More importantly, we never forget that it's worth killing for. The great station shuddered as the final dreadnought died in a sphere of nuclear fire. In the sudden quiet that followed, Marcus's words seemed to echo from every surface. You wanted me to kneel, he said, turning back to face the council chamber where representatives of 43 species sat in stunned silence. But here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to return to your worlds. You're going to tell your people that the humans have made a counteroffer to your empire's terms. He walked back to the center of the chamber, his footsteps ringing against the golden floor. Stand up. For a moment, nobody moved. 3,000 years of conditioning held them in place like chains. I said, stand up! Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. Stop kneeling to these parasites. They're not gods. They're just bullies with fancy ships. And we just proved that fancy ships burn like everything else. Slowly, one by one, the representatives began to rise. First, the Andromedans, their crystalline forms chiming like bells as they unfolded from their submissive postures. Then the Vega Collective, their tentacles writhing with something that might have been hope. Soon the entire chamber was filled with beings standing tall for the first time in millennia. Vorthak turned from the window, his 6 arms trembling with rage and fear. This changes nothing. We have armies, planets, resources beyond counting. Marcus shrugged. So do we now. Funny how quickly friends appear when you prove tyranny isn't invincible. He gestured toward the window where the debris of the fleet continued to sparkle like deadly stars. Besides, I think you're going to be too busy dealing with civil wars to bother with conquest for a while. The Admiral's mandibles clicked frantically. You don't understand what you've done. The Empire brings order, peace. Without us, the galaxy will descend into chaos. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Or maybe it'll learn to govern itself. Either way, that's not your decision to make anymore. He turned and began walking toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing, in the vast space. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at the assembled representatives, beings from dozens of worlds, standing tall for the first time in their lives. Oh, and Admiral? If you're ever in the Sol system, feel free to drop by. We'll be happy to show you what humans do to empire builders.